The LA Clippers are set to have the 30th pick on Thursday's NBA draft. But who could the Clippers select? Haven't done a draft episode yet because I've been waiting to get a former Locked On host, but more importantly, a college basketball guru on here to talk about some of the potential Clipper choices at that 30th spot, the final first-round pick. We're going to be talking about it all on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, LA born and raised, going into my 19th season as a Clipper fan this upcoming fall. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. Subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA sports, LA Clipper, and NBA content. And of course, Locked On Clippers is free and available on all your favorite podcasting platforms, including YouTube, where I want you to tell me tell us who you think the Clippers should take with that 30th pick in the draft. And joining me today, you might recognize him from one of the early episodes I had before the season. It's former host of Locked On Badgers. You can also catch him on the microphone at the Firestone Fieldhouse in Malibu for the Pepperdine Waves doing various sports. He's also a writer for Badgers Wire for the USA Today. That is college basketball fanatic Asher Lowe, my good friend, who used to be the host of Locked On Badgers. I think I said that, but I'm not sure if I remember. Ash, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. This is the perfect time to do an episode because my favorite event is on Thursday. And, you look on today's show, two of those four guys right there listed, Big D, we saw in person on Firestone Fieldhouse while I was on the mic. WCC guys, we kept it West Coast because it's you and I, of course, on the show today. So we had to keep it all West Coast, best coast for today's draft prospect preview.
Absolutely. And, you've made some really good draft predictions in the past. I remember when we were little kids. You said to me, this guy, Steph Curry out of Davidson, he's going to be a real steal. I mean, look what that's turned into. The greatest shooter to ever touch a ball. And, I had to give you some shout out with some of your good takes because the last time you came on this show, I think you may have had your all-time age the worst take of all. And that was that we didn't need a center. And very quickly, the Clipper fans were like, and rightfully so, we needed a backup for Zoo. I can't imagine if we hadn't had one center this year, how it would have gone. But hey, we all miss and hit and miss on our takes.
Well, that's why I'm back for a draft episode or not a Clipper episode, because this is where I hit.
There you go. So let's start out with the first name on our list. I think this is the one that excites me the most because, as you said, I was at the game that you did on the mic, Santa Clara versus Pepperdine. And, there is a guy for Pepperdine, Max Lewis, that is projected to go in the first round. Really happy for Max, but obviously he's going to be probably a little higher than what the Clippers will get at 30. But on the day that we watched these guys play against each other, Santa Clara and Pepperdine, nobody stood out more than lefty guard Brandin, Podziemski, or Podz, as people like to call him. I mean, this guy was crafty, great in the pick and roll, a really good rebounder at his size. You were talking about at that time, he's probably going to go second round, but now things are starting to change. He's projected to go late in that first round. Do you think there's any chance the Clippers can get him? And would you like to see the Clippers take him if he's on the board? How do you think his game will translate? Take it away.
I'll start with this. I get to talk about a Wisconsin guy in a way. Well, we don't have a Badger in this draft. We do have a Badger State native here in Brandin Podziemski, a guy that lit up, Big D, the state of Wisconsin when he was a senior in high school. One of the best Wisconsin scorers I've seen at the high school level. And I was there for a bit of his Wisconsin career there at the end of my time in Wisconsin. And when he was just first starting to kind of burst onto that Wisconsin basketball high school scene, which is a great scene out there, by the way, in the state of Wisconsin. You've had a bunch of top guys there. Really take it not only to the NBA level, but kill at the college level and then make it to the NBA level out of the Badger State. And he's one of them. A weird college career for him. Very strange college route. So he starts at Illinois, doesn't play much on a team that was absolutely stacked 2 years ago under Brad Underwood. Because of the transfer portal rule, we now know, if you're not a big college basketball fan, you probably still heard that the transfer portal is going crazy. The reason it's gone so crazy, two reasons. NIL is one of them, but the other big one is that you can transfer now and play right away. There's no year of waiting. And that's exactly what Brandin Podziemski did. His dad is very active on Twitter. His dad was talking a lot of smack when he transferred, said, my kid's going to come out and absolutely be a stud this year. And, well, his dad was absolutely right. It's exactly what he did. He transferred down. A lot of the time we see guys transferring up. This was the opposite. He transferred from a major to a mid-major. A lot of the times you'll see a guy kill at the mid-major level, transfer up, and, they average 8-9 points a game. They're kind of there. They're maybe the fourth or fifth best player on their team. This was the opposite. And I think it played really well for him that he went the opposite route, that he was a guy that barely played at Illinois in his freshman season, transfers down to the WCC, still a great league, as you'll hear me say many times about the West Coast Conference, not only on today's show, but if you ever talk to me, if you ever see me tweet, I will be talking positive things about the West Coast Conference, the finest conference in America. He transferred into it, plays for Santa Clara, Herb Sendek, fantastic coach, one of the best coaches at the mid-major level he gets to play for. He plays on a team, and I think this is often overlooked. He plays on a team that was really well suited to his skill set. He had a very good role big in Bediako to find, as the role man, a good finisher and a good just sizable screen setter that helped him get open a bunch. He had good shooters around him, Keyshawn Justice, Carlos Stewart, who's also a really good guy off the catch, attacking off the bounce, great vertical athletic threat, and just a really good scorer in general at all three levels, and really had a good year at Santa Clara. And then you have a guy like Parker Brown, good pick and pop four, can hit the three. So you have a pop threat, a roll threat, a vertical kind of athletic wing that can attack off the catch. You have good shooters. And what is that perfect for? A guy that's really good as a pick and roll ball handler. And that is exactly where Podz thrived all year long. You're talking about a guy who probably has done as much for himself as anybody in the pre-draft process. And that's why I don't think he's going to be there at 30. But I'm not ruling it out. And like you said, if we had talked in January, he's definitely there at 30. If we talk in March, he's maybe there at 30. And if we talk now in June, I don't think he's going to be there at 30. He's just done, because every time he plays basketball, he helps himself. And what better sign is there for a prospect than that, right? Every single time we see this guy take the court, he does something to help himself. It's a combination of elite touch, making the right read almost every single time in pick and roll, which is there a better indicator for NBA success than that? I'm not sure.
Nope.
I don't think there is.
And he's 6'5". He's not the smallest guy in the world.
He's 6'5". He's not an overwhelming athlete. He's not an amazing mover. He's not a great leaper. He's not the fastest guy on the floor. But like I said, operates better than almost anybody in this entire class out of the ball screen. Great vision, great feel, an amazing floater, which I think is a shot that will translate. And you don't need to be a super athlete to translate to the NBA level and have a great floater at that level. And I think he has that. Amazing touch at all three levels. Can create off the bounce enough. I think he's a plug-and-play guy right away at the NBA level. I think he's a guy that you'll see leading your second unit right away. I think he'll have the ball in his hands right away. I don't think he's a guy that you need. I think he's a guy you can make a catch-and-shoot threat, but I don't think he's a guy you need to rely on being a catch-and-shoot threat to be a positive offensive force for your team on day one, because he's that good as the ball handler. I think that translates to the next level. I've never seen a guy in person this year outside of him make the reads he made. As far as in-person prospects, I didn't watch Scoot in person. I didn't watch the Thompson twins in person. But as far as a guy making pick and roll reads, I did not see a better prospect than Brandin Podziemski in person, and I saw a lot of good prospects. In fact, I didn't see a better prospect game than that individual performance he had at Pepperdine. Another thing I want to throw at you, NBA range. My friend Zach Milner, who's a great draft guy on Twitter, does a really cool thing where he tracks what did guys shoot from NBA range. So he looks at only the threes they took in that NBA range. Obviously, a couple feet longer than the college line. Podz, 39 for 84. That's over 46% from NBA range three this year. That's not his three-point numbers. That's NBA range three-point numbers. Anonymous execs, we love the anonymous exec quotes, described as a mean MFer when he had him in a 3-on-3 workout and said that he makes every single read. You put him in the cage, you let him fight. That's what an exec said about him. And, quote, he makes the right read every single time. I think you and I, we don't need to be execs to have seen that in person at Firestone Fieldhouse with Podz.
Yeah, I mean, some of the passes I remember there was one pass he made that, a pass is special when you're watching a game on either TV or in person with the wide view and you don't even see the pass coming. And he threw one of those dots across the court. I didn't even see the pass, and he did it. And I was like,
is that on the left wing? One-handed?
Yeah, that one.
Rifle. I remember that pass.
I was like,
that pass was like 2 minutes left in that game. It was at Pepperdine.
It was definitely the last 10 minutes of the
game. First game of the WCC campaign at Pepperdine, and it was like the dagger of the game too. It basically sealed the win. That was a ridiculous pass. I know the exact play you're talking about.
He had so many shots in that game too where they were really well contested, and he just buried them. Like, against not the smallest guys in the world either, like against guys with good size. So I think I'm wishing him the best. As you said, I don't know if he'll be on the table, but it would be nice if we could get our hands on Podz. But coming up, going to be talking about a guy you guys are probably more familiar with. The city of LA has grown to adore this guy, especially if you're on the side of blue and gold. Going to be talking about the Pac-12 Player of the Year coming up. But before we do that, Ash, you ever done therapy these days, or you still not doing it? Or maybe you have done it. I didn't even know.
I'm a big fan of talking about your feelings, group setting, therapy, all of it.
Okay, well, BetterHelp is an absolute place that you and others should check out. It's so easy to get caught up in what everyone else needs from you and never take a moment to think about what you need from yourself. But when we spend all our time giving, it can leave us feeling stretched, thin, and burned out. And therapy can give you the tools to find more balance in your life so you can keep supporting others without leaving yourself behind. It's just a matter of finding that right person for you. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Locked On's NBA mock draft special is here, and it's bigger than ever. Follow along the entire first round in a 6-episode ultimate mock draft experience only Locked On can deliver. In my, funny enough, in my prediction or in my pick, I took Podz at the 30th pick because he was still on the board. The other Locked On host didn't draft him, so I took him. Yeah, you can listen to what I said. All episodes are available now on Locked On NBA Big Board, on YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. But let's get into the second guy we're talking about today. And he was a lot closer in the mock draft that I checked today of potentially going to the Clippers. And that is UCLA. I think it's safe to say now, UCLA legend Jaime Jacquez Jr. helped the team get to their first Final Four since 2008. He did that in 2021. And I mean, he's just improved every single year. Strong, really great touch around the basket, good defender. The thing is, where do you think he fits in the NBA? Because he's not big enough to be a 5. Is he good enough of a shooter and quick enough to be a 4 in the way the 4 is played today? I think in the 2000s, the more traditional power forward, I feel like he'd suit better. What's your opinion on how his game will translate? Because I love Jacquez in college, but how great will he be in the NBA?
So I think the really obvious thing here, if you've watched Jaime Jacquez and you look at the numbers, even if you haven't watched him and you know something about the NBA's draft, you know how prospects work, you know how we evaluate players, and you just look at raw numbers with Jaime Jacquez, there's a number D that jumps off the screen. The shooting just isn't really where you want it to be. For a guy that doesn't have another skill where you're like, that skill just jumps off the charts, whether it's an athletic skill, whether it's a passing skill. Now, I don't know if I agree with that analysis where the shooting is limiting him so much that I don't think he can be a great NBA player, even a good NBA player, without the shooting coming around. You're talking about a guy, 32% from 3 for his career at UCLA, and that's college line. And a lot of those shots were pretty open if you actually watched him take them. He wasn't respected out there at UCLA at any time during his career. It's low volume. You're talking about 2.5 attempts a game. So low volume, not great percentages there. But I actually am here to sell you that I don't think that's a limiting factor for him in the NBA. Would it be great if his shooting came around and made him a traditional stretch four? Yes, obviously that'd be awesome. First of all, I think there's signs to show you that the shooting could come around. 77% from the line is pretty good. Free throw percentage is often an indicator of can a guy become a better shooter at the NBA level. That's pretty solid. And that was quite a few attempts a game. That's almost 4 attempts a game from the free throw line. And the mid-range was pretty good. Contested mid-range, using angles well in the mid-range. Touch around the rim is pretty good. So I think there are a lot of indicators that show you his three-point percentage can get better. But I don't think it's a massive limiting factor for him. I'm going to tell you something about Jaime Jacquez that I think is going to surprise you a lot if you don't already know this. So when you think of Jaime, I don't think you think of great athlete. And vertical jump is not what athleticism is. It's just one tiny part of what makes a guy a great NBA athlete.
But we definitely overvalue when we talk athleticism. Almost everything comes down to bounce when we talk about it. And that's not right. There's a lot more, as you said, to athleticism than just bounce.
And his lateral movement is awesome. He's really, really good with his feet. He gets off the ground quickly. He's smart using angles around the rim. Combine. They tested his vertical jump. What do you think it was?
Let's say 34.
39 inches.
Whoa.
Which surprises you, right, when you watch him? Because he's not a guy that you're like, oh, he's playing so above the rim. I think the reason we don't think of him as a great athlete is because he plays at a slow tempo, which I don't think is a thing that limits you from being a great NBA athlete.
Definitely not. Look who just won the championship.
Yeah, exactly, right? Great example. He's not Jokic, obviously. We're not saying that. But great example. Jokic is an incredible athlete, one of the best athletes I've ever seen in the NBA. And he doesn't get off the ground well. Point was with Jacquez, he deceivingly gets off the ground pretty well. He's a good rim protector and was a good rim protector in college, got off the ground well to block shots in college. I think he's a good enough passer and will get better as a passer at the NBA level. I think that is an area for him to improve, but I think it's already good enough where he can contribute in a way there. But listen, you give this guy the basketball on the block in the NBA, I don't think there's a lot of guys stopping him now. Like 15 feet in, I think he's got a bucket. I really do.
Especially if you put
that's a valuable skill. Yeah, that's a valuable skill, especially when you pair it with someone that I already think is a solid defender and played for a guy that if you're not going to play defense for Mick Cronin, I don't care if you're the Pac-12 Player of the Year, you're not playing. So you better defend when you're on Mick Cronin's team. And he learned that the hard way, and he did defend the last couple of years. I think it was one of the big jumps in his game wasn't that he went from, 9 points a game as a freshman to 18 and took twice the shots and just had a way bigger role. I think his defensive growth over 4 years was actually greater than his offensive growth.
Wow. Jacquez, I do think he uses angles really well. And I think that with all the switching in today's NBA, there are going to be mismatches that he can exploit for sure. Also, he's going to be one of those guys, I think, that will be like in the right spot, like cutting to the basket. Well, like he has his years in college to have, play a smart game. We see that with Terrence Mann and a lot of the players that have spent multiple years in college. I'm really happy for Jaime Jacquez that he's going to be in the NBA. Let me ask you this. If Podz is on the board and Jaime Jacquez is on the board, who are you taking?
I'm taking Podz. I think Podz is the best pick and roll guy in the draft.
Wow.
I haven't seen somebody better as a pick and roll ball handler in the draft. There are limiting things about him, yes. I don't think the defense is where I'd want it to be on or off ball. I don't think has a gifted athletic talent. There's nothing that jumps off the page at me there. But as far as pick and roll decision making, I don't see anybody better in the draft, which I think will carry you to at least being a good NBA player. It's hard to see a guy fail who has that skill set. At least at some level, he's going to be a good NBA player, and I have full faith in that. And I would have said the same thing last year, D, about Jalen Williams. In fact, that's exactly what I said about Jalen Williams. I think I said he was the best pick and roll guy in the draft last year, and look where it's gotten him in a very short year.
Yeah, he was very good. My thing with Jacquez, do you think if he gets picked, Well, what do you see him as? Like a backup 4 off the bench for a team?
Yeah, I think I see him as a backup 4. I think I see him as a guy that can immediately contribute. So if I was a contender, I'd want him.
Clippers, you think he could get more minutes? You know, we have a whole thing at power forward, like what do we want to do there? Do you think that he could actually sneak into the rotation?
The Clippers are so weird, man. Who knows who deserves rotation minutes with the Clippers?
Yeah,
I know you wanted to talk a little bit about Brandin Boston. Speaking of guys that deserve rotation minutes, it's like I don't know what you need to do on a team like the Clippers. There's just too many bodies almost, and there's too many guys. There's too many guys that expect minutes. That's another problem. That have either been used to it at one point in their careers or are at a point in their careers where it's like, if I'm not playing, what am I doing? And it's a weird fit for a rookie coming in right now. In fact, it's one of the weirdest fits in the NBA, I think, for a rookie. And it's probably going to be the hardest type of place to find consistent playing time if you are a rookie.
Yeah, fair enough. And coming up, going to be talking about one more WCC guy and one more UCLA guy. Giving our thoughts on those two coming up. We're always throwing money at something. Kids' school supplies, a new house project, the list goes on. It's time to stop spending your hard-earned money without getting anything in return. Enter Ibotta. Ibotta gives you real cash back, not points. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you get real cash back that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. You can earn cash back on hundreds of online brands and retailers too when you start with Ibotta, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy was my favorite store as a kid, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKED when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use code LOCKED. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKED. Thanks for making Locked On Clippers your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow on the show, going to be talking about Lou Williams and his retirement, giving a little Lou Will tribute, and Marcus Morris. It's finally come out, unhappy with his role. Going to be giving my thoughts on that. But let's end it with Julian Strawther, a guy from Gonzaga that's taken huge leaps each season. This season, he looked like a bona fide star, and he's projected to go early second round, another wing kind of guy. Lawrence Frank seems to really like his wings. I remember he was checking out Max Lewis at Pepperdine, and he told me that straight up. I asked him who he was checking out. He goes, Max Lewis. So he clearly, and we know Lawrence Frank likes his wing guys. Julian Strawther fits into that mold, improved shooter, improved player, hit that game-winning shot against UCLA. Let's get your thoughts first on Strawther, his improvement, how you think he's going to translate to the NBA.
Yeah, so his improvement largely came out of necessity, right? But Gonzaga also really prepares guys for the moment. You know, if they spend multiple years in this program, it always seems like they're ready for that leap in production, that leap in requirement to be the guy. And they lose guys because they're a great program and, you know, they're churning and guys leave and certain guys step up. And Strawther really stepped up these last 2 years after a freshman year where he probably would have played at 95% of schools, but rode the bench at Gonzaga because that was one of the greatest teams ever assembled in college basketball, right? Like point blank. So
which was 2022 Gonzaga, 2022 Gonzaga with Chet?
2020
with Suggs?
Kispert, Suggs, Drew, or Joel. I mean, that team was absolutely insane. Anyway, enough about that team. I could talk about that team all day. Love that team. Baylor, you broke my heart. Anyway, Julian Strawther hit a 40-foot shot at Pepperdine. That shot is like marked in my head at the end of that first half. And then, of course, the Chris Jenkins light in the Sweet 16 against UCLA. That gamer was off the charts ridiculous. Anyway, Strawther, an elite shooter, 41% from three, a lot of those from NBA range. So I don't think anybody has questions about can he be a great NBA shooter. He's 6'7", but he feels even bigger when you look at him in person. He's got massive shoulders, massive arms. He's NBA ready in terms of his strength. He's a guy that has a good floater, which is something, by the way, Gonzaga drills like nobody else drills. There's a reason Timmy has a great floater. There's a reason even Suggs developed a floater at Gonzaga. There's a reason Kispert had a floater. It's not by accident. Gonzaga drills that like nobody else does, and that's why all their guys have that shot. Strawther's another guy that has that. Doesn't really have an in-between game outside of the floater and a three. And if I'm missing anything offensively from him, it's that. There's no real creation in that 8 to like 18-foot range. Like, when was the last time you saw Strawther do something in that range? Like, I can't think of it much throughout the year. There wasn't much of that. The ball handling, I think, has a little bit to go as far as creativity goes, as far as creating for himself off the dribble goes. I don't know if he's going to be able to have to do that much, though, at the NBA level to be productive because he is that good of a shooter. And I think he's a solid enough defensive player where it's not going to keep him on the bench. Whereas other guys that can shoot maybe can do a couple of things offensively. I think their defense is so far behind that I could actually see it being a hindrance and being the reason they don't get playing time. I don't think Strawther's that guy. But I like him a lot. I think he's a guy that is getting a bit looked over for whatever reason. Maybe people don't see another skill outside of the shooting. They don't see something else jump off the page at them, and I think that's fair. I wasn't moved by anything he did passing-wise. He's not a very good passer by any means. He's not a guy that can really create for others out of the pick and roll. But like I said, I don't think he has to be a good NBA role player. And I think that's what he is. I think he's an NBA role player at his peak. I don't see him ever getting tons and tons of on-ball reps at the NBA level. And I think that's okay. But he's a guy that can absolutely help a team. He's a guy that will come in day one and be able to knock down threes. He's a guy that will get his shot off at the NBA level. He'll have no problems with the strength and physicality of the NBA level. So I think there's a lot to like when you're talking about a guy that you're taking in the 30s to 40s, because unless your name's Nikola Jokic, you're not really looking for superstars in the 40s or expecting to land superstars in the 40s. And I think Julian Strawther is honestly, of the names we've listed, a pretty safe pick. And a guy that I think you know what you're going to get. You're going to get it on day one. He's from a program that prepares you to be ready for the NBA on day one. And I trust him to be a solid NBA role player.
What about Amari Bailey? He was a guy that had a lot of hype coming out of high school. Took him a little while to get going at UCLA, but let me know what your thoughts are on him before we close it out.
So he looked super different last 6 games of the year, right? His yearly numbers don't jump off the charts at you. You're talking about like a little over 11 points a game, pretty inefficient. But last 6 games of the year, and the key here is UCLA was playing without Jalen Clark these last 6 games, so a much bigger role for Amari Bailey. Here were the splits last 6 games of the year, which is a small sample size, but it's really the last 2 weeks of the year where he played himself into, oh, maybe I actually can go back to the draft, because people weren't talking draft with him for most of this season. He came out of the gate really struggling, but last 6 games of the year, over 17 points a game, 56, 47, 82 were the shooting splits, 47% from 3 last 6 games of the year. The mid-range is there too, but I think with Bailey, nothing to me absolutely flies off the page with Amari Bailey. I don't think the passing jumps off the page. The shooting jumped off the page for about a week and a half, but I don't think you can look at that sample and really extrapolate anything major from it. Good mid-range shooter and was always a good mid-range guy. Good athlete, not an insane athlete. Ball is Life mixtapes probably made him look like more of an insane athlete than he actually is. And that's one of the things we get into, vert, dunks does not necessarily equal great NBA athlete. It's how you move, right? It's how you use your body in space. It's how you use angles with your body and how you get to spaces, how you get it. Can you get by a guy consistently? I didn't see Amari Bailey beating a ton of guys off the dribble consistently this year. I just didn't. Size, he has fine size, but he's not huge, right? That doesn't move the needle. So there's nothing about his game to me that moves the needle for me. I'm not saying he couldn't be a fine NBA player one day. I honestly don't fully believe in him, though, because I don't see that one skill, even with Strawther, like the shooting I believe in fully. It'll be there. He's 6'7" and a good shooter. That's enough to me to believe in him at some level, have an NBA role for a long time, right? Where is that for Amari? Do you see it? Because I don't see like the one sentence. That's what makes Amari Bailey a guy that sticks in the NBA for 10 years. I don't see that. I'm not saying he can't develop it in one way or the other. And like I said, he had 6 games where he looked like a top 15 pick. But that was because the shooting was off the charts for 6 games. And as you know, as I know, a lot of guys can look like great shooters for 6 games.
Right.
And a lot of guys look like great shooters for 100 games.
No.
Now we're getting into very different territory, right? I mean, we saw a Martin twin look like one of the best shooters of all time for 6 games. Will he do that for an entire season in the NBA? I don't know if he ever will. He did it at a very important time. He's a great player. I loved him as a player in college. I really like him as an NBA player. Will he ever have a stretch like that again? I don't know. So I can't take those 6 games and say Amari Bailey is going to be a great NBA player or a good NBA player even. I don't believe in him as much as I believe in the other 3 guys that we've talked about tonight.
Final question: Strawther or Bailey if they're on the board for the Clips? You have to choose one.
I think I answered that with my descriptions of both. I take Julian Strawther. I like the size. I like the shooting. And yeah, I was moved by really the size in person is different than when you're watching him on TV. I saw both play in person this year and definitely would take Strawther. Fair
enough. Well, you can find Asher on Twitter at @alo_33 and of course at the Firestone Fieldhouse. Thank you for joining us, man. It was always a pleasure. Obviously, great insight that you had on these guys, and hopefully we land one of them. Remember, Locked On Clippers. You can follow it on all your favorite podcasting platforms, and of course, subscribe on the YouTube channel and let us know, based on the descriptions you heard, or maybe you already know about these guys, let us know which one of these guys you would want to take. And if you have someone else that you were eyeing at that 30 spot, let us know who you would take. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod and subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, where I will be posting videos throughout the off season. The age-old proverb continues. Go Clippers. I'll see you guys on the Wednesday show. Thanks, Ash. Peace.